Good morning. The reading today is taken from the book of Exodus, chapter 14, beginning to read at verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and camp near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to camp by the sea, directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think, the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, "What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services." So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them, as they camped by the sea near Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been travelling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night the cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots, so they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him, and in Moses his servant. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Let us pray. O God, help us to listen to your word with understanding, to receive it with faith, and to obey it with courage, for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. In December 2014, the film Exodus: Gods and Kings was described as an epic biblical film. I haven't seen the film myself, but when I read the description of the plot, it does not appear to completely stay true to the Bible passage we're looking at today. So let's turn and study the biblical version in Exodus chapter 14. I'm aware that both chapters 14 and 15 were set for today's reading, but they are both quite long. So my sermon is primarily focusing on chapter 14, and we'll just briefly look at chapter 15. But I do hope you will read it for yourself, and as a song that Moses and the Israelites sang to the Lord, it reads very much like a psalm. I think that today we've just had read to us one of the most well-known events of the Old Testament, when God divided the waters of the Red Sea to allow the Israelites to escape from Egypt and the grip of Pharaoh and his army. The conflict between God and Pharaoh has continued. It seems that despite the bringing of the plagues which brought Egypt into absolute crisis, darkness and death, Pharaoh has not learned his lesson. We're seeing Pharaoh still trying to exert his authority over God's people, and once again a confrontation between God and Pharaoh. And once more, God is determined to show that he alone is God. I will harden Pharaoh's heart. I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. The Israelites are desperate to flee Egypt, where they had been slaves under King Pharaoh. But in front of them is the Red Sea. From the opening 3 verses of our reading, it seems that the Israelites were caught in a trap of the Lord's making. The route the Lord told Moses to take the Israelites appears to have been a terrible military strategy. And as so often happens in the Bible, things get worse before they get better. Our reading gives quite specific detail of this. Pharaoh pursues the Israelites, overtaking them with a mighty force. We are told of 600 of his best chariots and all the other chariots in Egypt and officers, as the Israelites are camping by the sea near Pi-Hahiroth. Not surprisingly, the Israelites are terrified and cry out to the Lord as the Egyptian army overtake them and try to prevent them escaping back to Israel. The Israelites are convinced they are about to die and are so frightened they declare they are even prepared to die in the desert rather than remain as slaves in Egypt. Their lack of trust in God makes them convinced they have no chance of escaping the Egyptian army. It seems they have not learned anything and that they have forgotten about God. For despite having witnessed the plagues and experienced the Passover, they are still not trusting God when even worse trouble comes. The Israelites just don't seem to see and recognize that God is in control, and that this apparently hopeless situation they're in is actually part of God's big plan. Moses then answers their cries. Do not be afraid, stand firm, and the Lord will save you. You will never see these Egyptians again. The Lord will fight on your behalf. Stand still. But even though Moses is assuring them, it seems that once again he himself is not convinced of God's plan. "Why are you crying out to me?" asked the Lord. So once again, the Lord tells Moses what to say to the Israelites. Move on, raise your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry land. And as if Moses needed more reassurance, the Lord says for a third time, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians. The Lord is assuring Moses that he knows what he is doing. I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And the Lord was true to his word. It happened just as the Lord promised it would. The angel of God and the pillar of cloud moved behind them, and throughout the night the Israelites were protected from the Egyptian army. Moses obeyed God's command and stretched his hand over the sea. And all night the Lord kept the sea back, causing the land to be dry, to allow the Israelites to walk through the sea back into Israel. And as we read through verses 23 to 28, gosh, doesn't it read more like the script of a major disaster film? You know, like the scenes and drama that one sees at the end of a James Bond film, full of action and unbelief, because what the Lord causes to take place seems impossible. The Egyptian army, with all the horses, chariots, and men, try to pursue the Israelites, but the Lord causes a pillar of fire and cloud to come down on them, so they cannot see where to go. And then the Lord causes the wheels of the chariots to become jammed, so they could not even drive on. The Egyptians suddenly realize they're in danger and cry out, let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. Once again, the Lord is in full control of the situation as he tells Moses to stretch his hand out over the sea, and the waters flood back and sweep the entire Egyptian army into the sea. We're told there wasn't even one survivor. It was at that very moment the Israelites believed, as they witnessed for themselves, the mighty hand of the Lord against the Egyptians. What a blockbuster! What an amazing event. I wonder if someone was to ask you how this seemingly incredible event took place, what your answer might be. Do you think you would be able to explain how this took place? I don't think I could. So I was pleased to read that we're not alone in wondering how one could give a rational explanation of how a stretch of water, probably about 8 miles wide, could be divided into two. Perhaps you would answer and say it was a miracle. I think I would, because trying to give an explanation for an event that defies the laws of physics is beyond me. But according to Professor Colin Humphreys in the book Digging Even Deeper, a book Phil mentioned a few weeks ago and which I have used to prepare this sermon, there is something called wind set down, which could explain the parting of the Red Sea. Well, this intrigued me, and so a bit more searching, and I found some American research from about 10 years ago, which showed that a strong east wind blowing overnight could have pushed the sea back at a bend where an ancient river is believed to have emerged with a coastal lagoon. Certainly, verse 21 says, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind, and it turned into dry land. The waters were divided. But this doesn't explain the next sentence, that with a wall of water on their right and on their left. Thinking a bit more, I have to agree with the authors of the book Digging Even Deeper and recognise the fact that it is God who parted the waters, and it was a miracle. For me, just as I cannot give a rational explanation for how the water was turned into wine at the wedding at Cana, or how the 2 small loaves and fish was enough to feed 5,000, I accept that God is beyond my understanding, and this was all in God's plan. My faith is such that despite not understanding and being able to give a rational explanation, I trust that God is in control and that his plan is far bigger than I could ever and will ever conceive. For me, what this really powerful act of God shows is that Yahweh, the Lord, doesn't find it difficult, just as it wasn't difficult for the same God to make the waters flow back again and drown the whole Egyptian army. And when we feel frightened, and there seems to be plenty at the moment to feel frightened about, when it feels as if God is abandoning us, when we feel as if the weight of a whole army of worries, concerns and fears are upon us, what is our response? How do we respond and react? I trust that we first turn to God in prayer, and that we are able to trust and believe that God is in control of our lives. But I am only human, and I know there are times when I am like the Israelites and forget God. That there have been times, and there's sure to be many more times, when I try to step out on my own. Times when I try to cross the frightening and turbulent events ahead of me alone. But when we get through such a trial, I wonder, what is our response? Are we like Moses and the Israelites and sing a song to the Lord? Because that is what we read about in the very next chapter. Do read it and see the wonderful words of thanksgiving and praise. It reads so like a psalm, the prayers and hymns that were sung by the Hebrews. And chapter 15 begins with wonderful words of praise. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. And again in verse 2, the Lord is my strength and my defence. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. And then a bit further on in verse 6, your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. And a bit further in verse 11, who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? It truly is being sung like a hymn of praise, even with musical instruments and dancing. Just look at verse 20 towards the end. Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. When the coronavirus pandemic is finally over and we're allowed to gather again together in church and sing hymns, I wonder what your choice of psalm and hymn of praise will be. For me, it would be Psalm 100, and the hymn would be, Tell Out My Soul. Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you for your teaching. We thank you that you have shown to us that just as God was in control of the Israelites passing through the Red Sea, so you are in control of each of our lives. So be with us, Lord, as we live out our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.